Think all we had was midterm review planned for today, if I remember right. I think I have the syllabus downloaded too locally, but that should be it for today. A little bit of catch-up time. I started grading project one. I didn't get to all of them. Hopefully, I'll finish that up for you today. Zero looked good for almost everybody. Again, I think a couple people just had submission issues. Nothing wrong with their code. And then someone had mentioned or pointed out that in Canvas, I wasn't clear that you had to be rounding up for the number of items to buy and that it probably wasn't fair to take off a point of each of them. That's like, okay, that's probably fair. So uh, if I took off a point of each of the calculations for you because you didn't round up and I didn't go fix it, let me know. Because I said it in class, but it wasn't listed in Canvas. It wasn't implicitly in the rubric. It just said calculate and didn't mention that you should round up. I sort of assumed, but yeah, I suppose that's fair. If I didn't put it there, then it wasn't very clear. Again, a couple points aren't going to matter all that much here, but happy to give those back and just take 1 point off instead of three for the rounding bit there. So I think that was fine. All right, so we're going to go through these. So expect similar questions, but please do read them. I'm likely to go change some of the words. Okay, so that will affect some of these questions, right? The first one, do you know your name? Awesome. And agree to the academic integrity policy. Again, we had the fun stories about these things, but I'm going to trust you guys not to cheat. It's open book, open notes. You really don't need to work with someone else on it, right? Like you saw it, right? It's not hard. There's no reason that you even need to go ask someone else, right? If you can't do this, you and I need to have a conversation because something's not going well, right? That's your chance to check because things are only going to get harder in CIS classes, right? So if this isn't good by this point here, we really have to talk and figure out what's going on and get you hooked up with other services and things like that. So uh, again, it's meant to be easy. That my goal is that it's easy. You've got basically unlimited time on it here, right? Everyone should get 100% on it, right? And if you don't, then we'll have that conversation. Um, Number two, variable names can be anything you want. Is this a true or false statement? False. And why is it false? So what is a correct statement? Yeah, so we can't use any of the reserved words. Okay, that's a good catch. So this is a bit of a trick statement here. Yeah, so correct it. Ideally, more than just can't be anything you want. I mean, sure, that's technically true, but like, give me some detail would be better. I'd be much more happy with that. Um, the modulus operator gives you the decimal remainder from integer division of the operands. False. It's the integer remainder. Yep. Using rand will generate the same sequence of random numbers every time you run your program unless you give it a unique seed value. True. So that's why we use the time, which is our clock time, right? Um, an if else, if else, if else chain can always be replaced by a switch. False. Right? So what's a true statement? Yeah, cannot, or maybe switches can always be replaced by if else's. Yeah, either one. I mean, at this point, can't, I suppose. Yeah, that's fine. But really, it's the other way around, right? Every switch can always be replaced with an if else. Not every if else can be replaced by a switch. Switches can always be replaced by if else. Oh, look at that. I didn't even read my own questions. Is this one true or false? True. All right, easy. So copy paste this to the one above. Um, Sometimes they randomize the order depending on how it works in Canvas. For loops and while loops are completely interchangeable. Technically true, right? It's going to look weird in a for loop, but sure, right? You can completely replace it. All you really need, you can just put just the test. You don't need to have an increment. You don't need to have a declaration, right? You can leave them all blank, that sort of stuff. Yeah, we can completely change them. Now, sometimes we want to use a for loop because we know like it's better for counting and easier. We're not going to forget to increment things and get stuck in infinite loops, but that's up to you. While, sorry, while break and continue are valid options to use in a loop, they generally cause programs to be more confusing and should be avoided. Eric thinks this is true. Is that true or false? True. I generally think that makes them more confusing. Sometimes they're helpful, sure, but in general, if we can avoid it, it's probably better, right? That's fine. We'll use them every now and then, but if you can avoid it, probably better. Two reasons to use functions. Any two reasons. Easy to read the code, sure. Reusability, definitely. Great, right? Putting a name to what we're doing. right? We want code to be readable because we care about reading it. The computer also happens to have to read it, but really we write it for us. And passing arguments to a function, they are passed by value by default. True. Yeah, if unless you use that ampersand sign, right, we're going to pass by value. Functions can only return a single value or object. It's true. Now, once we get to arrays, an array is a container that has multiple values, but it's still just one thing. You're just returning one thing, even if it holds a bunch of others. So this will always be true for us. Other ways we looked around it is if you pass objects or if you pass variables by reference, you can set them, but you're not really returning anything. So the return keyword, right, is only returning one thing. We just have tricks and ways to get around it. If a parameter has a default value, you must always include an argument for it when calling the function. False, because it has a default value. You don't always have to include it. Or if it doesn't have a default value, you always have to include it. A couple ways we can make that statement true, right? What three things must you do with file streams when working with them? You open them, read or write, close them. Done. Now, closing usually happens implicitly when our program ends. But if our program is doing lots of things, you always want to close it out when you're done to make sure we're not holding it open for other processes and things. And some programs just run and they just stay running. Like if you're running some sort of server process, it just is always on, right? You don't want to leave your files open. So always make sure we're closing when we're done. True or false? By default, when opening a file for writing, it erases any previous contents of the file.
Sure.
True. Yeah, we have to specify append mode if we really want to append to the file and not load away. When reading and writing files, you must always use an absolute path to the file. False. No, the default is relative. You can if you want to. Right? So lots of ways to make that statement true. Right? All right, and then the long answer questions here. Let me open up Visual Studio. Not code. Oh my goodness. You can do C++ in code. It's a little bit of a pain to get set up here. It's not actually not terrible, but um, Visual Studio is a little easier. So maybe make a new project. One of these days, maybe we'll use code for stuff, but we'll call this midterm review. Do you want? Is this week 9? Are we really in week 9? I guess the first week didn't really count. So like 8.5 or something. Or this is the end of week 8. Sure. All right, and is this? I can't select the text here. Really? Really thought I could select the text. That's fine. So ask the user to enter 10 scores from 0 to 100. Ensure the values entered are from 0 to 100, inclusive of both ends. For every valid value entered, count how many values are greater than 80. Print the number of values greater than 80 at the end. Okay, so it doesn't sound like we have to return anything. Right? We're not necessarily even writing a function. We're just writing a little bit of code here. Okay, so a little validation loop. Now, this is not very clear here, and I wrote it like this on purpose, my apologies, but in the real world, you don't always get very clear, nice directions on every single step of the way here. So do you think that the validation loop should ask them to try again, or it should just throw away numbers that are not 0 to 100?
Ask them to try it.
Ask them to try again? I think that's what most people do, but it says for every valid value entered, count. So if you just threw them away instead of not within range, I'm just going to ignore it. I'm okay with that too, right? It was not super clear here, right? I expect most people to validate and say try again, but again, it's open to interpretation there, so that's fine. All right, so do a silly little loop. So 10 numbers, right? So for int number equals 0, oh my goodness, number is less than 10, number plus plus, and we'll go ask them 10 times. Sure. So we need ask them for a number, enter a number between 0 and 100. And we have an int for entered. I guess that's numbers. Okay, let me go with numbers here. We'll call this one number. The namespace, right? Using namespace standard. And we can see in a number. Move this one up one. I don't know. All right. See out, see in, and then we can do a validation loop. So while number is less than 0 or number is greater than 100. Out invalid, and then copy paste this right here. Try again. Sure. Once we get through this, we know it's valid. So outside of our loop here, we need the count, right? So this is our number values greater than 80. Right? Starts off at 0 until we know otherwise. Right? And then we can check, hey, if my number is greater than 80 plus plus. When we're all done with all of that, we can see out, I don't know, you entered number value greater than 80, numbers greater than 80, and an end line. A little long here. I'll just take this down one so it all fits. I think that's everything we needed. So that's what, 10-ish lines of code? 8 to 25? Okay. Probably longer than it needed to be, depending on how you set up your loops and stuff, but that's fine. I guess we could have put number invalid to start here, right? That would save us 2 lines of code. If we have the same code twice, we should feel bad about ourselves. So we can just set number -1 so that the loop run. I guess it's going to tell you invalid then. That's a bit of a bummer. So maybe we don't do that. It's okay. Right. Anyway, it's going to work here. Counter values spit out at the end. Okay, I think that's everything here. So a little validation loop, does some counting. Right, cool. All right, write a function steps to 1 in 3x plus 1 that accepts an integer value. Count the number of steps it takes to get to the value to 1 by following the rules below. If the number's odd, multiply by 3 and add 1. If the number's even, divide by 2. So far, as best we can tell, every integer in the world does this. We just can't prove it mathematically. This is fascinating here. If you pick too big of a number, multiplying by 3 does bad stuff. Just don't worry about that. We'll assume they're going to give me smaller than the billions for numbers here, and we'll probably be okay. Right? That's fine. All right, so we need a function. And the function is supposed to just count the numbers here. I probably should return the number of steps here. I'll make an int function. That's not very clear. I'll make sure it's clear what it should return here. So this is steps to 1, I don't know, in 3x plus 1, something like that. Give it an int for a value. So we need the number of steps, right? So an int steps starts off at 0. And while my value does not equal 1, we're going to keep on doing something. Right? Eventually we'll get to 1 and we'll stop. So when we're done, we can return steps here. So what do? We said if my value is odd, so if we modulus by 2 and the remainder is 1, it's odd, right? Then we need to go multiply by 3 and add 1. So we'll take my value times equal 3 and then value plus plus, add 1 to it. Sure. Otherwise, take my value divided by 2. Right? And then we just keep on going. And but either one of these cases, right, I'm going to take my steps plus plus, we've added a step. And now if we're not 1, do it again. 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 So eventually we should just be able to output my number of steps, what did I call it? No, steps 2. What was the example here? We said 5. And line. So that gave us 5 steps. Took 5 steps. And that one checked out. We could try other numbers as well, right? But any number we give it eventually will come back down to 1, which is really fascinating. You can put it in a loop if you're bored, right, to check it out, like loop up and see how many steps it takes. They're looking for a pattern in the number of steps too. That's kind of a fun thing to do. And numbers 1, number less than, I don't know, what do you want to go up to, like 100,000 just to check it out? And maybe we can make this a little bit prettier too. So number of steps, get to 1 from the number. Probably colon. Too many of these. Here, shoot. Okay. Oh yeah, thank you. This was number. Awesome. Outputting is the slow part here, but like Doesn't seem to be a whole lot of a pattern here. 43 steps and 43 steps. It's kind of fun. 43 steps again. It's kind of neat. There's like some repetitions in here, couple 69s, 118s. Come on. No, pause. I'm highlighting. No, you're supposed to pause when I highlight. Oh, bummer. Really? It did it the first time. All right, but we don't have to run to the very end here, but like a lot of 41s show up here. It's kind of cool. Just a fun little math puzzle here. I feel like that sort of stuff. All right, the function, good. The function does something silly with some kind of loop here. All right, and the last one. Write a function count of letters in a file that accepts two arguments. One for a single letter, another for a file name. Attempt to read the file with the given file name and count the number of times that letter appears in the text of the file. Cool. All right. So count of letter in file. So we need another function. Returns the count, right? So count of letter in file. Given, so if it's a single letter, that's just a char, right? Letter, and then a string for the file name. So we need some file IO stuff here. Include fstream, right? So we can open our file. Oh, and string, thank you. Include string. Awesome. And we want to go make an input file stream, right? My input file stream, input file stream.open, my file name, and oops, I guess I did that all lowercase. Sure. It's probably two words, right? Should be name, file name, or is file name? I don't know. Whatever. If my input file stream is open, right? We can do something good. If not, we can probably just return 0, I don't know, or some error. I don't know, whatever it happens to be. But we want an integer here, so we have to go count. So we want to go get the line and count how many times that letter appears in the line, in every line, right? So we'll have a string for the line, and then we can, I don't know, what do we use? Get line is probably easiest, or we could just use a CN, right? Both ways can work, however we want to do it here. It's going to do the exact same thing every time. Um, but why not use getLine? So we use getLine given our input file stream and the line here. So now I'm going to get the line, and now we can loop while my input file stream dot end of file. While we have not reached the end of file, right? I guess we should do that at the start here, right? While it's not the end of the file, go and get the line here. And now we need to loop through every character in that line, right? So we can say for char character in the line. Nope, that's the wrong place. There we go for curly braces. If my character is equal to the letter, we need some kind of count, right? So we need a count of letter. Starts off at 0. Take our count of letter plus plus, right? That's just loop through every character, right? Get the next line. 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 Right. So it'll work with CN as well. We'll just do it one. So the only time that this will not work well with a CN is if the character was a space, right? Because we're going to ignore spaces with CN. Again, I don't particularly care, and I'm not going to mark you down if you don't make it able to count spaces. But without using getLine, we wouldn't be able to count spaces. So just keep that in your back pocket, right? So getLine is probably a little bit better for this, just in case. I don't know why you'd want to count the number of spaces, but you could. That's fine. And eventually then, when we're done with our loop here, we can return our count of letter. And actually, this, we could just say count of letter here as well. Right, so I guess we don't even need that, right? Look at that. We can just use count of letter because it will just stay at 0 if it never opened. There we go. We saved one line of code. We should feel pretty good about ourselves. So, what is this? 20 lines of code here for that one, right? This one was 15-ish. So again, they're not super long, but the goal was I'm aiming for these to take you about 10 minutes or so. So if it was going to take you 20, right, you'd still have time to get this whole thing done in an hour and 15. That's sort of the aim here. If it takes you longer, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. If it's taking you hours, let me know. Right? It shouldn't take you hours. Okay. You feel okay? So again, I'm going to essentially take these questions and just reword them. So you'll have a question on validation loops, you'll have a question on functions, and another question on functions. So that deals with files. So really, that's like a files question, but you just happen to use a function. Like a math class, you don't get to forget anything that you've done. You're just going to keep on building on it and using it as we go. Okay? You feeling all right? You got all these done beforehand? Awesome. Cool. So you should be ready. Again, the midterm will open 11 o'clock on Wednesday. It'll be due the following 11 on Monday. It's untimed, so you can open it, close it, save it, come back to it. Yeah, no, I'm not planning on coming. If you'd like me to come and watch you take the test, I can do that. Um, other than that, I'm not going to plan to show up because no one's ever asked me to watch them take a test. And you don't even have to finish it, so you can come back to it the next day or the next day or the next day or um, whatever works for you. It's untimed. Um, One last note here is please use Visual Studio and then in Canvas, copy paste. Okay. Don't write your code in Canvas. Okay. Use your tool, actually hit run, make sure it runs, right? Do all that good stuff, and then just copy paste it over for me. That's probably the easiest way to get me the code. Okay. I had someone from my other class ask me, like, do I really have to type in Canvas? I was like, no, please don't type in Canvas. That sounds awful. Use your tools. I love tools. So all right, that's all I got today. If you got any other questions, feel free, let me know. If not, we're good to go. And we'll see you next Monday then. Thanks, everybody.